Go and live with that homeless man you love so much, George shouted, his face red with rage. You think this is a charity home? You're feeding a lazy homeless man while I work like a slave every day to put food in this house, George said, pushing her outside the gate and threw her bag on the floor. Amara gasped, not just from the pain in her back or the shock of falling, but from the realization that this was real. Her husband had just thrown her out of their home, out of their life, and all because she gave a plate of food, one plate, to a man who hadn't eaten in days. Obinna, the homeless man with dusty hair and tired eyes, stood frozen a few feet away. Then, slowly, he walked toward Amara, ignoring George's curses. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen, Amara sobbed, clutching her stomach and trying to catch her breath. Her eyes were red, her heart racing. Obinna gently helped her to sit on a broken pavement stone beside the gate. You did what your heart told you to do, he said calmly. And I promise, Amara, you will never regret this. Amara looked up, confused. His voice had changed. He didn't sound like a beggar anymore. Then, Obinna did something strange. He reached into his torn coat and pulled out a sleek, new iPhone. Amara blinked. Is that real? He dialed quickly, speaking in a tone that didn't match his ragged clothes at all. Yes, I'm ready. Bring the convoy to my location immediately. Amara stared at him like he had grown wings. Within minutes, the sound of luxury engines filled the quiet street. A convoy of black SUVs, shining like onyx, rolled to a stop in front of the house. Uniformed men with earpieces and dark shades stepped out. One of them opened the back door and bowed. We're here, sir. Wait. Sir? Amara whispered, her eyes wide in disbelief. Obinna turned to her, his eyes softer now. My name isn't just Obinna. I'm Chief Obinna Okeke, CEO Holdings. People call me the Kingmaker. I've made presidents. I've helped build nations. But for the last few days, I was just a hungry man looking for kindness. And I found it in you. The last thing Amara saw before fainting was George standing at the gate, frozen, his mouth wide open, as the security men helped her into the car like royalty. 7 days earlier. The air inside the small bungalow was tense that morning. Amara, barefoot and tired, stirred a pot of jollof rice in the kitchen. Her pregnancy belly strained against her wrapper. The aroma of rice and fried chicken filled the room, and for a brief moment, everything felt normal. But not for George. I've told you before, Amara, he said, standing in the doorway. His voice was low but sharp. I don't want you giving our food to strangers. He's not a stranger, Amara replied gently. I don't know his full name, but he's a person. A human being, George. That's even worse. You don't know him, yet you keep feeding him like he's family. George snapped. Amara turned to face her husband. Her eyes were soft, but firm. My mother always told me that those who give never lack. Helping the poor is never a waste. You never know who you're feeding. George hissed and shook his head. Your mother's stories won't pay our bills, and when I come home one day and find we've been robbed or worse, what will your wisdom say then? Amara didn't reply. She knew she couldn't change George's heart overnight. He didn't grow up like she did. He didn't understand that kindness was not a weakness. So when the knock came on the gate that morning, 3 soft taps, Amara knew it was him again. Quietly, she took a disposable food pack, scooped a generous portion of jollof rice and chicken into it, and slipped out through the side gate. There he was, dirty, barefoot, with a worn-out coat and looking hungry. Obinna gave her a tired smile. God bless you, he whispered as he took the food. His hands trembled as he opened it and began eating right there on the sidewalk. Amara watched him eat, her heart swelling with joy. She didn't know why this act gave her peace, but it did. A part of her felt like her mother was smiling from heaven. Then she turned to go back inside and saw George, standing still, watching her with rage in his eyes. He didn't shout. Not yet. He waited until she walked in. You did it again? He said quietly. I just gave him... Chicken? My chicken?" His voice rose like thunder. "You dare disobey me in this house?" "Amara, you're no longer my wife." "Please, I'm sorry he was hungry. I didn't mean to disobey." "I said get out!" he roared, storming into the house. Within seconds, he returned with her bag. He threw it on the floor and pushed her towards the gate. "Since you love that beggar so much, go and live with him." "George, please, I'm pregnant. I'm due any moment. You can't do this." "I don't care. Who knows if the child is even mine?" he spat. "Out!" Then he shoved her out and slammed the gate behind her. Amara stood, trembling, too shocked to scream. Her eyes welled up with tears as she slowly collapsed to her knees. Then the man she had fed every day walked forward and changed her life forever. The polished black SUV rolled past the security gate, and for a long moment, Amara sat quietly, her eyes darting between the embroidered leather seats and the uniformed driver who kept peeking at her through the rearview mirror. She couldn't speak. She was still holding her belly with both hands. Her heart beat faster than ever before, not from fear anymore, but from confusion. Her mouth was dry. Was this really happening? Obinna, now seated beside her in a clean, sharp navy blue kaftan, completely different from the tattered shirt he wore just minutes ago, leaned slightly toward her. "I know you're still in shock," he said gently, "but I want you to know something very important." Amara looked at him, her lips trembling. "Everything is going to be okay." Her chest rose and fell. "Why? Why are you doing this for me?" Obinna smiled, then looked out the window as they drove through a private road lined with tall trees and manicured flowers. "Because you're the first person in 5 years who gave me food, not knowing who I was. No conditions, no expectations, just pure kindness." Amara blinked back tears. "You gave me your best," Obinna continued. "You gave me chicken when you didn't even know me. That is rare. That is precious." Amara shook her head slowly. "But my husband, he hates that I do those things. He said it's a waste, that feeding people like you is foolish." Obinna nodded with a sad expression. "Then I fear he never understood the true meaning of wealth." The car curved into a grand compound. Amara gasped. Before her stood a massive cream-colored mansion with towering columns, green glass windows, and a fountain in the middle shaped like a golden lion. Several staff members were already lined up on both sides of the driveway, bowing their heads in respect. A maid opened Amara's door, and another rushed forward with a wheelchair. "I can walk," Amara began to say, but a wave of pain rippled through her belly. "No, ma'am," Obinna said quickly. "From now on, you don't need to lift a finger. This is your home." "Home?" Amara repeated, her voice small. "Yes, as long as you want it to be. You'll be taken care of like royalty. That child you carry, he or she will never lack." Amara was wheeled into the mansion, and everything felt like a dream. Marble floors, gold chandeliers, walls covered in expensive paintings. The air smelled like fresh roses and vanilla. Within minutes, Amara was led into a large bedroom with velvet curtains, a queen-sized bed, and a view of a private garden. Female attendants began to undress her gently, handing her a soft silk gown and warm towels. One of them smiled as she adjusted Amara's pillows. "Madam, you're safe now." 2 weeks later, Amara held her newborn baby in her arms. A boy, soft brown eyes, 10 little fingers, a peaceful face that looked just like hers. She named him Sam, short for Samuel, which means God has heard. The birth took place in a private suite at one of the top hospitals in Lagos, fully owned by Chief Obinna's foundation. Doctors, midwives, and 2 personal nurses had been on standby since the day Amara moved into the mansion. Yet, through it all, George never called, never texted, never checked in. Amara learned, through one of her old neighbors, that he had married a woman from his office just a few days after throwing her out. Her chest tightened, but she stayed silent. "What kind of man does that?" the nurse had asked. But Amara just kissed her baby's head and whispered, "You have all the love you need now." 1 month later, Amara walked through the mansion garden with Chief Obinna, her baby sleeping quietly in a stroller beside her. The warm evening breeze brushed past her cheeks as she listened to birds chirping above. "I still can't believe all this happened," she said. Chief Abina chuckled. "Life has a way of turning things upside down when you least expect it." Then he stopped walking. "There's someone I want you to meet." Amara turned as a tall, well-dressed young man stepped through the garden gate. His suit was crisp, his shoes shiny, and his smile wide. "Meet my son, Jonathan," Abina said proudly. "He just returned from France." Jonathan walked up and shook Amara's hand with gentle respect. "My father has told me a lot about you," he said. "It's an honor to finally meet the woman who reminded him of what humanity truly means." Amara blushed. "Thank you." Jonathan looked down at the baby in the stroller. "And this must be Sam?" Amara smiled as Sam blinked awake and stretched his tiny arms. "He's beautiful," Jonathan added. Abina placed a hand on Amara's shoulder. "Jonathan is the managing director of my group of companies. I know you mentioned you studied economics." "Yes." Amara nodded slowly, a bit surprised. "I graduated top of my class. I just never had the chance to do anything with it." "Then you'll have your chance now," Chief Abina said. "You'll start working at the headquarters next week. We don't waste talent in this house." Amara's lips parted, shocked. "Are you serious?" "Completely," Jonathan said. "And I'll be working closely with you." 2 years later, Amara sat behind a glass desk, flipping through economic projections and contract documents. Her outfit was sharper-fitted, cream-colored power suit. Her nameplate read, Amara Okoye, Executive Director, OO Holdings. Jonathan knocked gently before entering. "Ready for the press briefing?" She nodded. "Just about." Their eyes met briefly and smiled. Working together every day, Amara and Jonathan had grown close. And slowly, without warning, love bloomed. He never pressured her. He never judged her past. He saw her strength, her fire, and her honesty, and that's all that mattered to him. When he finally proposed under the cherry blossoms in the company garden, Amara said yes through tears of joy. Chief Abina clapped like a happy child. Their wedding was the event of the year. Dignitaries, celebrities, and business moguls attended. The bride, who once had been thrown out of her home, walked down the aisle in a diamond-studded gown, escorted by the man she once fed on the street now, her father-in-law. Jonathan kissed her as fireworks lit the sky, and in that moment, Amara thought life had finally come full circle. But destiny had one more twist waiting. One morning, 12 years later, Amara and Jonathan were in the back seat of their car, laughing as they drove to Sam's high school graduation. Sam, now a handsome young man with a bright future, had just received a scholarship to study medicine abroad. The car was filled with celebration. Then Amara's phone rang. She smiled and picked up, but within seconds, her face changed. She froze. "Amara?" Jonathan asked, his tone serious. "What's wrong?" Her voice cracked. "It's Sam. He's been kidnapped." Jonathan slammed the brakes. The tires screeched as the car swerved to a halt on the highway. Amara's phone slipped from her trembling hands and landed on the car mat with a dull thud. No, she whispered, gasping as she stared blankly at the dashboard. "It's George. It's George. He took Sam." Jonathan grabbed the phone and read the message that had just come in. It was short but brutal. "You can't hide him from me anymore. He's my son. I've taken him, and you'll never see him again. George." For a moment, time stopped. Jonathan's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. What? He growled. 12 years. That man vanished for 12 whole years, and now he comes back to steal your child? Amara sat frozen, tears flowing. Sam doesn't even know him. He was just a baby inside me, 9 months pregnant when George threw us out. He's never met him. Jonathan was already dialing the chief security director. "We need roadblocks. Immediate lockdown across all major exits from the school. Get the plate number and SUV description from the school gate. Full mobilization. I want helicopters if we must." "Yes, sir." The officer barked from the other end. Jonathan turned to Amara, who was shaking uncontrollably. Do you remember what the SUV looked like? Anything at all? Amara shook her head, then paused. Wait, Cynthia. Cynthia saw it. She said something. She mentioned the color and plate number. Jonathan quickly called home. Put Cynthia on the linen now. Cynthia, their 10-year-old daughter, sounded scared but clear. Daddy. It was a black SUV. The number plate started with KRD 411. He went toward the express road, the side with the big orange billboard. That's all I need, baby. You did good. He hung up and looked at Amara. We're getting him back. I swear it. An hour later. At a federal checkpoint, not far from the interstate bridge, officers in bulletproof vests stopped a black SUV. The driver wore dark shades, and beside him sat George, now looking older but still full of pride and arrogance. In the back seat, Sam sat confused, tense, arms folded across his chest. Is there a problem, officer? George asked smoothly. Yes, the lead officer said. We have an alert on this vehicle. Please step out. I'm his father, George barked. I have the right to take my own son. Sam's voice cut through the air. You're not my father. I don't know you. I have never seen you before. George froze. The officers opened the back door gently. Are you Sam Okoye? Sam nodded. Yes, sir. Did you come with this man willingly? No. He tricked me. He said there was an emergency and Mum sent him. George's smirk vanished. Before he could say another word, he was in handcuffs. Back at the mansion, when Sam stepped out of the black federal car, Amara screamed and ran into the driveway, arms open. Sam dropped his backpack and rushed into her arms. I thought I lost you, Amara cried, holding him tightly. You'll never lose me, Mom, he said, his voice shaking. Never. Jonathan placed a hand on Sam's shoulder. You're safe now. I promise. Sam looked up at him. Thank you, Dad. Those words made Amara's heart swell. Inside, Cynthia hugged her brother, refusing to let go. I told you you'd come back. They laughed through the tears. A week later, the case hit national headlines. News stations aired the footage of George being led in handcuffs to the courtroom. Old neighbors recognized him. Former co-workers were shocked. No one had known what became of him after he divorced Amara. The court found George guilty of child abduction, neglect and abandonment, psychological harm, false identity usage to remove the child from school. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison with no parole. Amara didn't attend the trial. Neither did Sam. When asked why, she simply said, We've already moved on. 5 years later. Sam stood proudly on a stage, wearing a deep blue graduation gown. Cameras flashed as the dean shook his hand and handed him a scroll. The auditorium erupted in applause. He had just been named Best Graduating Medical Student in Nigeria. In the crowd, Amara clapped with tears in her eyes, wearing a long, flowing gown. Jonathan, seated beside her, whistled proudly. Cynthia recorded every second on her phone. Sam stepped up to the podium to give his speech. He looked over the crowd and paused. I want to thank my mother, Amara, for teaching me that kindness is never a weakness. That helping someone even when it costs you can change everything. He looked toward Jonathan. And to my dad, the man who stepped in when someone else stepped out. You taught me strength, discipline, and love. I wouldn't be standing here without you. The audience applauded. In a quiet apartment across town, George, who had just finished serving his prison term, sat alone, watching the event on TV. His beard had grown out. His eyes were sunken. His clothes were old. When Sam said the words, "My dad," George lowered his head and cried. That evening, Chief Obinna was reading a book in the garden when Amara walked in. "Papa," she said, smiling, "the president just called Sam personally. He wants to meet him." Obinna chuckled. "That boy is going far." Then Amara's phone rang. Unknown number. She picked it up. "This is George," the voice said. "Please, I need to see you. One last time." Amara's fingers gripped the phone tightly. Amara sat quietly in the private library of the mansion, the phone still pressed to her ear even though the call had ended. Outside the window, the sun was setting behind the distant trees, casting a golden glow across the marble floor. George had called. After coming back from prison, her heart wasn't racing anymore. It didn't ache either. There was only stillness, a quiet space inside her chest where pain used to live. She slowly placed the phone on the table. "Who was that?" Jonathan asked, stepping in with a glass of orange juice in one hand. She looked up. "George." Jonathan stopped mid-step. "What did he say?" "He wants to see me," she said softly. "He said, he's sorry." Jonathan exhaled and placed the glass down beside her. "You don't owe him anything, Amara. After everything he did, throwing you out when you were 9 months pregnant, abandoning you and Sam, never once asking if you were alive, tried to steal the child from you before he was caught and sent to jail. Now he's back and remembers to apologize. Where was his conscience all these years?" Amara nodded. "I know. I'm not going there for him. I'm going there for me." The next day, the press conference was held at a small community hall in Lagos. Nothing fancy. Just a simple banner that read, "A Father's Apology. George Okoye speaks out." Camera crews and journalists from various TV stations were present. Curious neighbors, bloggers, and even a few former friends of George filled the seats. Whispers passed between rows as everyone waited to hear what he had to say. George stepped onto the podium. He looked completely different from the proud man who once stood at the gate yelling at Amara. His shoulders had shrunk. His clothes were plain. His face was older, heavier with regret. He cleared his throat and looked at the sea of faces before him. "My name is George Okoye," he began, voice shaky, "and I'm here to publicly apologize for the worst mistake of my life." Cameras flashed across the hall. "I once had a wife, a good woman. Her name is Amara. She was kind, too kind. The kind of woman who could feed a stranger even if she was starving. And I hated that about her." He paused, his voice catching. "I thought kindness was foolishness. I thought helping the poor was a weakness. I thought I was strong, but I wasn't. I was a coward and a fool." Whispers grew louder in the hall. "I threw her out when she was heavily pregnant because she gave food to a homeless man, someone I thought was worthless. I didn't know that man was Chief Obinna, one of the most powerful men in this country. But even if he wasn't, my actions were unforgivable." George looked into the cameras. "Amara, if you're watching this, I'm sorry." He wiped a tear. "To my son, Sam, I don't even deserve to call you my son, but I want the world to know I failed you. I failed as a father, and I will carry that shame for the rest of my life." He turned his head, as though speaking directly to the air. "To Chief Obinna, thank you for doing what I didn't. Thank you for raising Sam, for giving Amara a real home. I never deserved her, and I accept that." The hall went silent. Then, slowly, a few people began to clap. Back at the mansion, Amara watched the conference from the living room, with Jonathan and Chief Obinna. She didn't say anything when it ended. She just sighed and stood up. "He's finally seen what he lost," she said. Jonathan looked at her. "Will you let him meet Sam?" "I'll leave that up to Sam." That evening, Sam sat on the edge of the garden fountain, flipping through messages on his phone when Amara approached him. She sat beside him quietly. "You saw the video?" He nodded. "Everyone's talking about it. Even some of my classmates sent me clips." Amara smiled faintly. "He asked to see you." Sam looked up. "Why now?" She didn't have an answer. Instead, she touched his shoulder. "You don't have to see him. You're not obligated." Sam sat silently for a moment, then shook his head. "He didn't want me when I was a baby. He didn't feed me. He didn't clothe me. He didn't even know what school I went to. But now that I'm being celebrated on TV, he suddenly remembers I'm his son." Amara opened her mouth, then closed it again. "I already have a father," Sam said firmly. "His name is Jonathan. He was there for every science fair, every hospital visit, every exam. He prayed with me. He held me when I cried. No one can take his place." Tears rolled down Amara's cheek. Sam looked at her. "Mom, I'm not angry anymore. But I won't pretend. That man is a stranger to me." Amara nodded. "Okay." 2 years later, Sam, now 23, stood in a white lab coat in the surgical theatre. His name tag read, Dr. Samuel Okoye, resident surgeon, Federal Medical Center. He had just completed a 10-hour surgery, his biggest yet. The president's daughter had suffered a brain tumor, and no other surgeon dared attempt it. Sam had stepped up. The surgery was successful. The media exploded with praise. Newspapers hailed him as the miracle hands of the country. The president personally awarded him the National Honor Medal for service and bravery. That night, a televised event showed Sam stepping onto the stage, a standing ovation following every step. When he took the mic, the hall fell quiet. "I'm honored beyond words," he said. "But today isn't about me alone." He looked toward the first row, where Amara and Jonathan sat. "It's about the woman who believed in kindness, and the man who believed in me. My mum, love saved a stranger, and your kindness saved me. Dad Jonathan, you gave me a name and a future." Applause thundered through the hall. Somewhere across town, George sat alone again, in a small room with peeling walls and a flickering TV. He watched as his biological son stood tall on the national stage, strong, brilliant, beloved by the entire country. And not once did he mention him. Tears streamed down George's face, not because Sam was great, but because he wasn't part of his story. He clutched an old picture of Amara when they were newly married. "I had gold in my house," he whispered, "and I threw it away. But that wasn't the end." The past had returned, but now, something else was coming. Something George had hidden long ago, a secret buried deep. And when it came to light, it would shake everything. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when the letter arrived. Chief Obinna sat in the reading room, his hands gently turning the pages of an old journal, when a maid entered and handed him a white envelope with no return address. He frowned. It was addressed to Mrs. Amara Okoye, private. He handed it to a guard. "Take this to Amara." Minutes later, Amara sat in her study, Sam beside her, working on medical journal notes. Cynthia was playing the piano softly in the background. "Mom," Sam said, "a guard dropped this off." Amara took the envelope, carefully opened it, and pulled out a single handwritten page. As she read the first line, her fingers froze. Her eyes widened. The room grew still. "Mom?" Sam asked, standing up. "What is it?" Amara slowly passed the letter to Jonathan, who had just entered. His face darkened as he read the contents aloud. "To Amara, if you are reading this, then it means I can no longer carry this burden in silence. What I'm about to reveal is something I should have said years ago, but I was too ashamed, too broken, too afraid of what it would destroy. Sam is not your only child. Before I threw you out, I received an anonymous letter. It said you had a child before we got married, a daughter, and that you hid her from me because she wasn't mine. I confronted your aunt then, not you. She confirmed it. Said the child had been born while you were away at the university, and she had sent her off to an orphanage because you were too young to raise her. I was angry and bittered. I didn't know what to believe. That was when I stopped loving you. And that's why I said what I said when I threw you out. I wanted to punish you for a secret you didn't even know existed. But a month ago, I received another letter. This time, from someone claiming to be your daughter. She found me. She called herself Hope. She said she had proof. DNA results, and photos. She is alive, and she's looking for you. I couldn't bear to face you, but maybe now, after everything, you deserve to know the truth. I am sorry for not confronting with it when it mattered. George, the letter ended. Amara's world tilted. The room spun slowly, like a carousel out of control. Jonathan caught her before she slumped. A daughter?" she whispered, pressing her hand against her chest. "But I never had a daughter. I never gave birth before Sam." Sam stood frozen, speechless. "What does that even mean?" Later, that night, Amara and Chief Obinna sat in the private family lounge. The letter lay open on the table. Cynthia had been sent to bed, but Sam remained, seated beside his mother, confused and worried. "I don't remember any baby," Amara whispered. "How could this be as a woman? I was never pregnant before I met George. Never. But I was sick for a while during university. I collapsed once and was taken home, and within that period of months, I couldn't remember what happened when I regained my consciousness. After some months, they said it was malaria. But what if it wasn't?" Chief Obinna folded his hands. "You mentioned your aunt raised you after your mother passed?" Amara nodded. "Yes, Aunt Philomena. Strict and controlling. She always hated me showing affection or helping others. Always said I was too soft." "What if she hid this from you?" Obinna asked gently. "What if she made decisions you never knew about?" Amara looked toward Jonathan, her voice trembling. "What do I do? How do I find her?" Sam spoke. "We find her, Mom. We don't wait. We look for her." 2 weeks later, using every resource within Chief Obinna's network, investigators were sent across the country. Adoption records, old orphanage registries, DNA centers, hospital transfers, and then a break came. A woman named Hope Chisom Emeka had visited a Lagos DNA center twice in the past 6 months. Her mother's name was listed as Amara. The dates matched. She was now 24, a graduate of law, working as a legal advisor at a youth advocacy NGO. Amara held the printout in her shaking hands. Her eyes scanned every line as tears poured down her face. "She's real," she whispered. "My daughter is real." They arranged to meet at a quiet garden restaurant in Ikoyi. Amara wore a simple white gown. Jonathan held her hand until the moment she stepped out of the car. Hope was already seated, facing the fountain. Her hair was long and curly, her eyes wide and searching. When Amara walked up, Hope stood slowly. Their eyes met. Amara's breath caught in her throat. Hope took a single step forward. "Mom?" Amara broke down, her knees buckling. Hope caught her in a hug that melted many years of confusion, pain, and questions. They held each other tightly. "I didn't know," Amara sobbed. "I never knew." "I know," Hope whispered. "I found out everything." Jonathan and Sam watched from a distance. Sam blinked rapidly. "She looks like Mom. She is her," Jonathan said quietly. 6 months. Later, Hope moved into the mansion and became part of the family. Cynthia finally had a big sister, Sam, a twin in spirit. And Amara, the joy of reunion she never thought possible. Hope helped expand Chief Obinna's charity foundation, using her law degree to rescue trafficked girls and wrongfully imprisoned women. Together, the family flourished. 1 year later, at a national award event honoring women in leadership, Amara was called to speak. She stood, microphone in hand, surrounded by Hope, Sam, Cynthia, Jonathan, and Chief Obinna. She smiled at the cameras. "I was once thrown out of my house for feeding a hungry man. A man I didn't know was a billionaire. I was abandoned while pregnant, left to suffer. But today I stand here not as a victim, but as proof." She turned toward the crowd. "That kindness is never wasted. It always returns folded into blessings, multiplied beyond imagination." The room erupted in applause. George watched from home, sitting in the same chair where he once wept. He closed his eyes. "I lost gold, and now the world gets to see it shine. I hope you learn from my terrible mistake." What is your views about this story? Where are you watching from? If you like this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.